Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Continuing to take a look at the Week 4 slate in a massive Big Ten matchup as the Iowa Hawkeyes head on the road to play Penn State. Dill, we've been to some whiteout games at Penn State. Probably the most electric environment in college football. Iowa's offense really struggling to find some traction, going up against an elite Penn State defense. Night game, whiteout. Things could get hairy. Kind of excited to get into some of these matchups now. Before we do, just want to say thank you to you guys. The support for all these game breakdowns truly does mean a lot to the boys. So if you do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. But more importantly, again, the best part about doing this, hearing from you guys, learning from you guys, and chopping it up about football with you guys in the comment section. So let us know your takeaways or your big keys to the game in the comment section. Dill, going to kick this one off to you. Iowa heading on the road, night game, whiteout, Penn State. How we feeling?
Yeah, I mean, obviously one of the toughest environments to go walk in and play, and that's with an Iowa offense that really doesn't feel like they've gotten it going. I know there was a lot of hope with Cade McNamara and a handful of transfers at the skill positions coming in, but the fact that they just haven't found any rhythm. I mean, you look at Cade's numbers, 3 picks to 4 TDs. That's really, I mean, that's low-level football given the competition they've
The
been playing.
more alarming number for me, a 53% complete, and you said it best, like not the highest level of competition, a 53% completion percentage and only 5.9 yards per attempt. So you're like not completing many footballs. You're also not really pushing the ball down the field. That's probably the most alarming aspect. And Dill, let's start with that Iowa offense matching up against the Penn State defense, where I guess we'll start there. Like I said it in the offseason. I still think it. I think this is a top 5 unit in the country, loaded with talent in the front 7, a really strong secondary. For me, it really is hard to find many ways Iowa is going to be moving the football consistently down this Penn State defense throat.
And frankly, the way you probably thought about this Penn State defense is they are a little small up front. And I mean, Penn State, like you see them go play in Illinois to go to run the football and really hold up really pretty well. And you look at Iowa, it's just, I mean, they're really not running the ball incredibly well either. You look at that Iowa State game, which is probably the toughest defense they've played. They really, aside from one 59-yard run from Patterson, couldn't get anything going. They're not moving guys off the ball. The offensive line isn't dominating. And again, when you're playing the way they're playing in the air, which is not a whole lot different than what they were doing last year, it's maybe a little bit better.
That's fighting words.
Not a ton better. And without Lachey, with him going down with injury, he's been the only guy. So I'm with you. I just struggle to see what this Brian Ferentz-led offense is going to be able to cook up.
So here's my take on this Penn State defense. Like the narrative around like we need bigger bodies on the inside for this Penn State defensive line. Like I see some Penn State fans said that in the summer, and I get those concerns. That being said, like they win with speed and athleticism and penetration. I mean, this is a team that lives in opponents' backfields. Talking about Chop Robinson, Adissa Isaac. I think Abdul Carter and Curtis Jacobs, probably 2 of the best linebackers in the country. Danny Dennis Sutton. Yeah, they don't have like the massive size on the interior, but athletically, like they're so hard to deal with, where they've only allowed 3.1 yards per carry. And one of those games was against two games, West Virginia and Illinois, against physical offensive lines. They can hold up in the run game. And you look in the passing attack, like Iowa has one receiver, one pass catcher, I should say, because he's tight end, who's gone over 100 yards this season. That's Luke Lachey. He's now out for the season, it sounds like, going up against the Penn State secondary that I think has arguably the best cornerback in the country in Kalen King. On the ground, I think it's going to be tough sledding. And then through the air, it's hard to see this Iowa team getting any sort of traction against how good this Penn State team is.
And that is the problem. It just, I don't see right now, just looking at it, where Iowa can really win. Because again, you're right. This Penn State defense is really, I think, again, I thought they were going to be really good. They were really good last year. They are playing tough against the run, which was the one place I think Penn State fans had some questions. And again, just with what I was doing and the way Cade's kind of not progressed into what I think they needed him to be, I don't know. I just like, and this is honestly no different than, frankly, almost any Iowa.
This is Iowa fans are used to being. Let's get into the more fun part for the Iowa fans. That's Phil Parker in this defense. I would vote for Phil Parker to be president of the United States. I mean, he is just day after day, like year after year, he loses guys to the NFL, retools. This defense still really, really good, right? 3.5 yards per carry, 56.4% completion percentage given up. Phil Parker continues to do an excellent job. going up against the Penn State team that when Drew Aller is comfortable, he looks like he is one of the most talented quarterbacks in college football. That being said, I think against Illinois, you saw them do some things, take away the run game a little bit, get some blitz packages going where it made him a little bit more uncomfortable. My question is, can Iowa do that and make Drew Aller uncomfortable? Because when you see him comfortable like he was against West Virginia, I mean, he's going to piece up opposing defenses.
Yeah, and that'll be the question for Iowa, a team that, again, as of yet, I mean, they've been able to statistically stop the run. I do think you look in the early portions of that Iowa State game, Iowa State's offensive line was getting a little bit of movement. They were running the ball okay. They were moving the football in general a little bit for that first maybe quarter and a half or so, and then Iowa really put the clamps on them and started to take over that football game. But again, that offensive line isn't in the league of Penn State. That rushing or that
running backs certainly aren't.
Of course, it's not in the. So it will be interesting to see if that Iowa defensive line, frankly, is going to have the game of their life. So they're going to need to be really tough on double teams and in facing a really physical, hard-nosed rushing attack, especially given how many really good players they lost in that front seven last year to the draft.
That's by far the biggest storyline of this matchup is, can Iowa stop the run, win on first and second down, and then let Phil Parker scheme up some of those blitz packages and coverages where you can maybe force some turnovers? Because again, going back to the Iowa offense, like, you don't really trust them to move the football 80 yards and go score touchdowns. What you do trust maybe is Iowa forcing some turnovers, given that Iowa offense, like that's how Iowa's been winning games, complementary football.
And you're right, like Drew Aller hasn't really made mistakes yet, but we did see him play that Illinois game. He wasn't wildly sharp. And if you're not really sharp against Iowa,
they're going to take the ball away.
That's the team that, I mean, the way their cornerbacks and safeties jump routes and are able to trick quarterbacks into making bad plays. Like, you've already seen it against like Iowa State in what they were able to do, taking a pick six to the house. Like, those are the type of plays that if you're Iowa, it's what's kept them in football games for 5 years when their offense.
And how do you do that? You do that by winning on first and second down, getting teams behind the chains, and then kind of letting Phil Parker, Cooper DeJean kind of go to work.
What Illinois, frankly, did. Illinois just, their secondary, again, they don't have the pieces they had last year to go maybe capitalize on it all the time. I think just given the way Iowa plays defense in the secondary, they might, and frankly, they kind of have to, because I don't see much else that they can go beat Penn State with. Like,
I
Penn
said
State
something maybe a little
better.
Said maybe something a little controversial. I called Kalen King maybe the best cornerback in the country. Iowa fans might have an argument that Cooper DeJean might be, which understandable. They'll getting to the pick here. Iowa coming in 14.5-point dogs on the road, night game, white out against Penn State. How are we feeling about that one?
And it goes against my better judgment to like take a big spread on Iowa, because it
same.
never really mattered how bad their offense was and maybe how they've always kept games tight because they can play defensive football. They take the ball away and they punt effectively and do those things on special teams they need to do. But I really think this Penn State team is a hammer, and I think they're just the way they can go match up with this Iowa team top to bottom. I think they're dominate them up front on both sides of the line. I struggle to see what Iowa's going to be able to do. So given that, I'll go Penn State, even though I think it sounds like
and this is certainly not something I'm itching to bet, because I also hate taking Iowa as two plus touchdown dogs. That being said, I'm kind of with you. I just haven't seen enough from that Iowa offense where if it does kind of get opened up a little bit, I don't know if Iowa is going to be consistently able to score points against this Penn State defense. Now, the caveat is if Iowa can force some turnovers, make something happen in special teams, because I could see it being a little bit of a rock fight. Iowa tends to do that to teams that maybe have a little bit more talent and keep it close. Like a turnover, a special teams play could kind of make this one hairy, but from top to bottom, talent-wise, this Penn State team is much more talented. I think they got the better offense and quarterback play. I'll ride with Penn State too. Again, not something I'm itching to bet, but I think
to me, it's like I didn't think they played great against Illinois last week and still hammered them pretty good. So that's like, again, that defense was nails. The offense obviously was pretty weak. So when you see a team like that go on and play a not a great game against a solid football team and still kind of beat the brakes off them, that's an encouraging sign for that. Penn State might be better than people even think.
And I'll caveat, Iowa's looking like they might be the favorite to win the Big Ten West with how like Nebraska and Illinois and Wisconsin's playing. Like it has less to do like me not liking this Iowa team because again, it's still like the bones of this Iowa team. Good defense. You still a lot to like. It's just this Penn State team, I think, is truly kind of in that upper echelon of that college football landscape. Give me Penn State again at home, whiteout. Love it. Appreciate you guys rocking with the boys again. If you do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Appreciate you guys, and we'll talk to y'all later.